pleasant day, at least as pleasant as could be expected, given the circumstances that we are now dealing with. As I watched the certification of the Orange Bastards' electoral count yesterday in the joint session of the House and Senate, I thought of some significant days in the history of this country. Most recent, December 7th, 1941 is not recent, but December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, January 6th, 2021, and then January 6th, 2025, yesterday. In my understanding of history and my appreciation of reality, those are 4 days that truly, as Roosevelt said about December 7th, 1941, days that will live in infamy. I watched the certification yesterday, and in addition to some minor waves of nausea that rolled over me as I listened to the Christian devils in the joint session applauding every time the electoral count from a state that went to Trump was announced, as if they were at a goddamn basketball game or something. I watched Kamala Harris, who had the awful duty of certifying her loss, in effect, and listening each time one of the facilitators who were handling the procedure of counting these electoral votes would refer to her as Madam President, the president of the Congress in that moment, and how painful that had to be for her. Here's a person who has been Vice President of the United States, has been a senator, has had an exemplary life, as far as I know, having to certify the election of a criminal, a convicted felon, a rapist, a liar, a cheat, a grifter, and the whole goddamn world knows this. And to be an unwilling or willing, depending on how you want to interpret her words, a willing participant in this bullshit, guaranteed that yesterday would be one of those days of infamy. But where were the Democrats out front rioting and screaming and beating down the doors and windows? Where were the son of a bitches like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers storming the Capitol of the United States? Where were they? Where were the members of Congress running like scared rabbits through the halls of Congress trying to find a safe place as these monstrous son of a bitches pushed on by Donald Trump invaded the U.S. Capitol? Where was that yesterday? A full 180-degree turn from 4 years ago when these riotous son of a bitches, these traitorous scum, voters for Donald Trump stormed the Capitol to try to halt the certification of Biden's victory. Well, and remember what Trump did. He sat in one of the dining rooms of the White House, stuffing his fucking face with whatever he was stuffing his face with, watching all of that on television, gloating in it. Oh, look, they love me. Oh, it's a day of love. And yesterday, he squatted at his Mar-a-Lago Winter Palace as the certification of his election played out with no fanfare at all. And then the bastard, the orange filth, put up on his toy social media platform that yesterday was a, quote, big moment in history, end quote. Vice President Harris in a video statement that she released ahead of the horrible task that she had to perform yesterday. She hailed what she called the, quote, peaceful transfer of power as a bedrock of U.S. democracy, end quote, and she called her duty as the vice president, quote, a sacred obligation. She added this, quote, as we have seen, our democracy can be fragile, and it is up to each of us to stand up for our most cherished principles, end quote. Most cherished principle. There is not a principle of constitutional law that this orange piece of garbage Donald Trump has any respect for. What a fucking bum. Now, the whole event yesterday, sure, it was symbolic, but there was drama surrounding the event yesterday, which was obvious if you watched any of it. At one point, before the official count began, this little Christian prick who's the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, tapped Kamala on the arm, and she looked at him, and the Christian little bastard pointed into the audience, and Kamala looked where he was pointing. And then Kamala, you could read the body language, you could read her lips. She touched her heart as if to say, yes, I love you too. And then she said, you couldn't hear this, but you could read her lips very clearly. She said, I know. And I could only guess that the person at whom she was looking had said something to the effect of, I'm sorry you have to go through this, Kamala, or this is an awful day, Kamala, or Miss Vice President, you have my deepest love and respect. Whatever was said, it's very easy to fully understand what Kamala Harris said in response. I know. The entire complex of Capitol Hill was on high alert because of what the orange, filthy fucking Nazi pig did 4 years ago. Fencing erected around the Capitol complex. Bunch of cops throughout the Senate and House buildings, on the Capitol grounds, everywhere. And remember what this son of a bitch Trump, he bragged during the campaign about the size of the January 6th crowd that had tried to destroy the country. And he called it a, quote, day of love. And the protesters that day had love in their heart, end quote. Miserable bastard. And now Trump has made it clear that he is going to pardon. He's going to pardon the people who tried to destroy this country. He's going to pardon them. Democrats didn't challenge the results of this filthy goddamn election on any level, in any manner. Democrats respected the long-standing idea and convention that the certification should be a formality, part of the peaceful transfer of power. Trump had no respect for that. He's a fucking bum. Trump won the Electoral College, 312 votes to 226. And he won the popular vote by a margin of 2.5 million. That's it, 2.5 million. Hillary Clinton beat his ass by a much larger vote than that, and yet the Electoral College gave the presidency to him. Joe Biden beat his ass by a larger margin than that and rose to the presidency. So this scummy little son of a bitch, Donald Trump, didn't even win 50% of the electorate. He got 49.7%, I believe. 2.5 million people. That was the margin. What did Harris say yesterday? Quote, I do believe very strongly that America's democracy is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. Otherwise, it is very fragile. and it will not be able to withstand moments of crisis. And today, America's democracy stood. End quote. That is one way to look at it. Very positive way to look at it from the Vice President Harris. I don't see it that way at all. I just don't. I guess I should say, gee, I'm sorry, but I don't see it that way. I see what happened yesterday as the willing handover of power in this country to a goddamn criminal, to someone who has no respect for law or order or the Constitution or decent behavior. He is a goddamn criminal. I can only imagine what the leadership of various countries around the planet are thinking. I'm sure they witnessed what happened yesterday. It was carried by the BBC. I'm sure it was carried by all sorts of networks around the planet. What did people see? They saw a criminal, a fucking rapist criminal, being handed the levers of power willingly. Here, go ahead, Mr. President. You won by 2. There's 350 million of us in this country, but you won by an infinitesimal percentage of that. So here's the whole country to you. And your gang of filth, your scummy fucking inner circle. Here it is. Take it. So Kamala Harris, for whom I have great respect, can talk about preserving the requirements, I guess, is the best way to put it, of democracy, including the peaceful transfer of power. And she can say it from her heart. I think she means it, even in the full knowledge of what she had to participate in yesterday, handing over power to a fucking bum like Trump. But I'm not the vice president. I'm not Kamala Harris. I'm a little old podcaster from the mountains of North Georgia, and I can just simply say, what a fucking perversion yesterday. And the shitty little bastards in the Christian fascist side of the House and the Senate who squealed and squeaked their little celebratory noises every time another state's vote, electoral vote, was announced, if that vote went for this Nazi son of a bitch, Donald Trump. Now, as I am putting this together, I notice that the orange filth is going to speak soon from his winter palace in Mar-a-Lago, where I'm sure the props will be in place. The American flags will be up. The pomp and circumstances will be there. And then this orange piece of human waste will open his goddamn mouth. And there's no telling what's going to come out. So here we are. December 7th, 1941. 9/11, 2001. January 6th, 4 years ago, and then January 6th yesterday. For me, 4 days of absolute disgust and filth. To see this rapist, criminal, son of a bitch felon being handed the government of the United States, handed to him. Yeah. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical Talk Radio Network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.